afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our last water coolers conversation of the semester. Today's topic will be, can student accessibility services help you? And of course, my name is Priscilla and I'm with the Office for Advocacy and Violence Prevention. And with me today is Amanda from the UTRGV PD Victims Services section department. I don't know, Amanda. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Just before we begin, I just want to give a quick disclaimer or trigger warning. The content of the discussion could be troubling, especially for survivors of violence, victimization, or harassment. Please feel free to leave the discussion if it triggers an upsetting response. Please treat this session as a safe space and respect the boundaries of others, especially if their views or experiences are clearly troubling to them. So some objectives for today, of course, we want to gain an understanding of what student accessibility does on our campus and how they can help our students. We want to recognize who can receive the services from this department. And of course, we want to identify the various off and on campus resources we have around in our area. And of course, joining us today from Student Accessibility is Maria Cabanillas. I hope I said that right. She's, of course, our senior interpreter at the department. Maria, do you want to give us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Maria Cabanillas, and I work here with Student Accessibility Services. I am the senior interpreter. Basically, I coordinate all of the services for deaf and hard of hearing population on campuses, all campuses.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us today. I'm sorry if you keep hearing the little ringing of the bell. I don't know how to turn that off while I'm sharing on my end. So hopefully that won't bother too many people. And just for a disclaimer, if you do need the closed captioning, it is enabled. You can turn it on and turn it off on your Zoom at the I believe bottom of the screen. Of course, we want to be mindful of everybody that's in our viewing with us today. So I'm going to turn it over now to Amanda. Amanda, if you want to kick it off, and it's all yours.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Priscilla. Maria, thank you so much for joining us today. We have some great information, so we're going to jump right in because we only have an allotted amount of time. So what is student accessibilities? What does it mean? Who do you all help?
Sure. So we are a department here on campus that helps or exists to facilitate students' equal access to university programs, services. We also promote student learning, development. We foster independence, self-advocacy, and of course, we provide leadership to the campus related to disability issues. We primarily serve students in their academic setting with any kind of disability, be it visible or invisible. Visible, obviously people on wheelchairs, mobility, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But invisible, also students with ADHD, depression, anxiety, things that you don't see. I do want to clarify that we do not serve student employees, and just like faculty and staff need to do when they need accommodations in their place of work, they will need to contact HR, go through their accommodation request form and their process.
Okay, awesome. So to be sure, it's students. Got that. Now, do the students have to pay a certain fee to participate in this program?
Not at all. The department does not charge students for these services.
Awesome. Okay, so tell us about the kind of accommodations that your office does assist with. You just give us some examples.
Sure, definitely. We have the most popular or the most accommodations that we mostly provide are extended time for exams and quizzes. Basically, if a person has an exam for an hour, that student will get an hour and a half. Or the student has an exam for 2, that student will get 3 hours. And also distraction reduced environment, and that means that the student will come and test here with in our offices. We have, like I said, our Brownsville office and our Edinburgh office. We also provide alternate format on course materials and or textbooks, and alternate format can be audio, it could be e-text, it could be Braille, and that e-text is also accessible in many different ways. We also provide the use of audio recorder in classes so that the student can record their lectures and review them at a later time. Something that pertains to my expertise would be video captioning. We do video captions for students who are deaf or hard of hearing, and then also interpreting and card services. Card services means communication access real time. And that's basically, it's almost like the captions that come on TV when you're watching them, when you turn on the CC button, It's the same thing, but in while they're in class. Another accommodation that we do provide, but it's not widely used, is the taking of pictures of the board, using their cell phones to take pictures. Let's say the professor wrote something, do a drawing or whatever, then the student will have an access to take pictures of that board. We also provide accommodations to students with temporary disabilities. Maybe,
Okay, what would that mean?
okay, so maybe a student was in a car accident and broke their arm, or they had a lower limb injury. Well, in those cases, they would, go through the whole process of applying through our office, and then they would get accommodations such as attendance consideration, 1 to 3 additional days, or a late arrival, early departure from minimum 5 minutes to maximum 30 minutes later, early departure. We also have furniture accommodations for in-person classes, such as providing a chair with lumbar support, or providing a desk where that is not that is not like the similar desks. They have desks, tables in rooms, and we have those all across the campus. We also, the most important thing to remember is that we approach each case individually based on their students' needs.
Right.
So not all students use the same kind of accommodations. We tailor them to them according to what they need. We also provide services for pregnancy and parenting. So a student can apply for accommodations such as extended temporary assignments, including the other accommodations that I just recently mentioned. I do want to mention that we provide services such as that's called SAMS, which means Student Accessibility Mentoring. And this one goes in line with our mission, which is to facilitate student learning and development, and we foster independence and self-advocacy. So our practicum and graduate interns, they meet with our population, the students that we serve, and help them with time management, with self-advocacy, communication with faculty, like how to draft an email, things like that.
Okay, I do want to ask, what happens if a professor doesn't allow recording in a class, but it's part of your program?
Yes, so the student will, of course, we always encourage the student to reach out to the professor first and say, this is my accommodation. Can you, it's stated on my letter of accommodations. If the professor still does not allow the student, then the student will need to reach out to their assigned access coordinator. In Brownsville, we have Janie Villarreal. In Edinburgh, we have Georgie Goodlet. So they'll reach out to their assigned advisor, and then the assigned advisor, access coordinator rather, will then be that liaison between the student and the professor and try to the accommodation.
Wonderful. And that's why it's so important. Like you mentioned, everything is tailored to each specific student. It's awesome. Now, this is going to be more geared towards, Priscilla and my field and the kind of people that we work with. So let's say that a student experiences domestic violence and they have a medical emergency, which leads to some sort of physical altercation. Will they be able to utilize your services temporarily, like you mentioned?
Of course. I mean, yes, they can also apply through our office. Our primary responsibility in that kind of case, which is very sensitive case, of course, would be to refer the student to university resources, just like the department where Priscilla works, OVAP. And also, which is the Office of Advocacy Violence Prevention, and also to counseling services. Another one is the UTRGV Psychology Clinic. So we try to encourage them to attend to those resources that we have on campus. The student does need to follow the SAS guidelines, which requires the student to submit supporting documentation. And that will be the reason why we'll be referring them to these services. So maybe there is a history or documentation and history of abuse. And there's a diagnosis attached to that. It could be depression. In that case, as our office will then ask the student to apply and see what accommodations we can provide the student according to their diagnosis. But the most important thing is that we want to know what the barrier is within the academic setting. How is their new diagnosis affecting them while they're in school? And so this student can receive temporary accommodations based on their temporary disability. but maybe this is an ongoing diagnosis, something that they're going to be experiencing for many, many, many years. So we will provide those accommodations on a permanent basis if needed. So, but it's always important for them to follow through with their therapist, follow through with whatever resources we have on campus, which they're really great.
Right, exactly. So you touched a little bit about on this, but I do want you to, give us more information on how do you go about getting assistance from your office? What's the process? What are the qualifications or criteria? How does a student utilize those services?
Sure. So to apply for our services, a student needs to go through the MySAS portal. It's a portal that we have. Our office has a portal where students will sign in with a UTRGV email and password. And then at the very top, there's 3 boxes. The one on the far left says student online application. That's the one that they're going to click and then, of course, submit their application. After that, they do need to submit supporting documentation from a qualified professional. That documentation would need to be typed on a letterhead, dated, and signed by that qualified professional. It also needs to identify the diagnosis of a disability or the disabilities that the student may have.
Okay.
And then also describe what are the functional limitations or the symptoms of such disability. Now, if it's possible, the documentation should have the severity and also the expected progression. Is it going to get better? Is it going to go away? Or is it going to be worse over time? And of course, with most diagnoses, students do take medication. So we would also need to know what are the side effects. After we have the application and the documentation, the student will then participate in an interactive discussion with their assigned access coordinator, like I mentioned, Georgie or Janie.
Right.
And those in that meeting, they will discuss what are the accommodations that they need in this academic setting. Once that conversation goes through, and that's a perfect time for the student to disclose or to tell that access coordinator, this is what I need, this is what I'm struggling with, and then we'll be able to provide appropriate accommodations, right? So once that student has been approved, he or she will be notified, and then they can request their accommodation letter through the portal. So the portal is the main thing here. They're always going to go back to that portal. And it is important to know that the students do need to request their accommodations every subsequent semester. So let's say they apply for the fall semester, they're going to need the accommodation in the spring, they need to submit the request again. And then they need it for the summer, submit it again. So every subsequent semester after that. And it's really quick and easy. We call it the 4-step process. It's super quick. And, just go into the portal and come to our office and we'll explain more. And then if there is a temporary disability that's only for a semester or 2, then our office will reach out to the student every semester just to have a follow-up discussion, see if those accommodations are still needed.
Okay, awesome. That was my next talking point. I was going to ask if it's per semester, but you answered that perfectly.
Yes.
Good. Great. Good to know. So tell us where your offices in Brownsville and in Annenberg are located. And do students have to have an appointment? Can they walk in?
Right. So our Brownsville office, we're located in the Music and Science Learning Center, which is the MSLC 107 or 1.107. And then in Edinburgh, we're in the University Center, EUCTR 108. You can come into the office at any time you want. If you have questions, you want to ask questions as to what is the process, what do you need to do, whatnot. But we much rather have a meeting, to set up a meeting where we have the intake or we have a review of accommodations. We do meet students in person, but we highly encourage virtual meetings, especially because of our current COVID situation, right?
That's what I was going to ask you also. What's the protocol right now? Because of, we're still going through everything. We still are trying to be as safe as possible.
Right. Well, we highly encourage students to visit, to call, whatnot, but meetings are mostly done online. But there's some situations that do require in-person meetings, and we're here to help. So we're not going to turn people away.
Awesome. And that's important. I like to meet with people via Zoom or in person. So I understand sometimes it's tricky to just read directions online. So that's good to know. What about confidentiality? Are the services that the students are provided, are they confidential? Are they left off of the transcripts and the students' records?
Yes, these services are completely confidential. they're not identified on transcripts. So transcripts will
Okay.
not have student was served by student accessibility services. It's not going to have that. Any documentation, any diagnosis are also not disclosed to anyone. It is up to the student to disclose to the faculty if they want to of their diagnosis or the disability, but we do not. Everything stays in-house.
Okay.
In
Great.
the
That's good.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So like, let's say that a student is enrolled in the program. What are their responsibilities to continue to participate, and any sort of rules that they have to abide by?
Sure. So the main point or the main thing that we want to remind our students is that they need to request their accommodations every semester. And they have to be responsible. They have to take ownership of that. If we request additional documentation for their request of a different disability, please follow through. If we reach out, it's because we're pending something and we need the student to respond. So it's very important for students to keep an eye on their email and answer the phone. Sometimes we have our student employees call them through their personal number, so they put them in private. And so we ask students, please answer your phone. But now that we're here in person, most of the time we will use our office lines either way. Very important for them to complete, like I just mentioned, a 4-step process to request accommodations, and mainly without us prompting them, like, hey, don't forget to do this. Like it's easier for them. They do it and they don't have to worry about it anymore for the semester.
Exactly.
But if they do not request accommodations for 2 consecutive semesters, then we will archive their case. And then we won't provide them accommodations until the need comes up again.
Okay, that's good. So let's say that a student falsifies or alters their documentation they submit to your office for whatever the reason, right?
Yeah.
What would happen in a situation such as that?
Well, in those kind of cases, of course, we will have a conversation with them.
Okay.
We will have a conversation with the student and saying, hey, this is not correct. And the main thing is that we will mention it to SRR, Student Rights and Responsibilities, because in essence, they are being dishonest, right? And one of our cores here at UTRGV is it's academic. We have a strong feeling against academic dishonesty. So it'll be the same thing with falsifying documents that are not from not from a qualified professional. So we will refer them to SOR, and of course they have their own process.
Okay. So even let's just say they're taking advantage where, they might have a diagnosis or they might have a temporary issue that does arise in using your services. But at one point you all kind of figure, they're taking advantage or something along those lines. Is something done in that instance where they're, per se kicked out of the program?
Right. Well, good question. Well, we don't necessarily kick them out, but we will suspend their services. For example, let's say that I personally work with students who are different hard of hearing. If they're absent from their classes without telling us, and we're constantly providing these services, but they're not utilizing them, then we will suspend those services until the student comes to our office and say, hey, I need my interpreters, or I need card or whatnot, because we definitely want to use, we want to put those services to the best possible use here on campus.
Right, exactly.
So, and then we also reach out to the student in case we see that they're not utilizing our services. We'll reach out to them and see if there's a separate barrier. Maybe there's something else that they're going through and we don't know about. So it's best if they reach out to us, but we'll also do our due diligence and reach out to them if needed.
That's good.
But as always, students do need to adhere to the UTRGV Code of Conduct, being responsible, accountable, and avoiding, doing dishonest things.
No, understandable. I'm going to go back. I do want to touch on this. What about service animals? Are they implemented in the SAS program? Not to be confused with emotional support animals.
Thank you. Yes. So there is a difference. We do have we don't have service animals, but there are service animals, and then there's also emotional support animals. So students who have a service animal, or the way to get a service animal, to qualify as a service animal, the dog needs to be trained to do work and to perform tasks that are directly related to that student's disability.
Mhm.
It could be like guiding people who are blind, alerting people who are deaf, stabilizing a person who's going through an anxiety or PTSD, panic attack or a flashback, assisting people on wheelchairs. So those are service animals, and they are certified and they are trained to do certain tasks. And they are allowed also to accompany that person with a disability anywhere on campus, off campus, classes, meetings, events, internships, field works, you name it. Emotional support animals, on the other hand, those are animals that provide emotional support to alleviate one or more identified symptom or effect of the person's disability. So they are used for the person's as a reasonable accommodation. They are provided as a reasonable accommodation for that a specific person. And that is mainly done for students who live in housing communities where they have a no pit rule. For example, here on campus, we do have a no pit rule for the housing, but students who do have an ESA and they have been deemed, it has been deemed as a reasonable accommodation, that they will be able to provide that kind of documentation to the housing to allow them to have an ESA with them. That documentation also follows just like our regular documentation that we request for students with disabilities. It does have to be from a qualified professional, but differently than that, this documentation needs, or the student needs to have an established ongoing relationship with that professional. So there has to be like a history that they've been seeing each other for, quite some time. And then also these requests for ESAs will be reviewed every year while the student is here living on within the dorms. And just, it will be sometime in the summer just to prepare for the fall semester.
Okay.
Yeah, and then this documentation also needs to provide, it needs to include why or the need for the ESA for this emotional support animal. Based on the student's medical or mental health condition. And also needs to explain what is the job of that said animal. For example, let's say Jojo, this is I don't know, just some pet. Alleviates the students' bouts of depression, reduces anxiety levels, what have you. So that would be on the documentation from the qualified professional.
Now, I would hope that everybody would be on board to assist you and your colleagues in this program, because it has some amazing things for our students. Right. But let's say for whatever reason that the faculty doesn't want to cooperate and participate in your program, what would happen in that instance?
Okay, so faculty definitely need to understand that they are an active participant and following through with the accommodation letter. They are responsible from the moment they receive that email. They are responsible. If a student is eligible for, let's say, extended time and exams, faculty will need to adjust that allotted time on their online exam. We will reach out to the faculty in case a student reaches out to us saying that their faculty is not following through. We will reach out and, of course, we'll have conversations with them.
Okay.
But yes, it's very important that they do follow through because it's for the students' benefit. It's
most
for the
definitely.
The needs. I mean, if we wouldn't provide them with that accommodation, we'll be violating the ADA law, and we don't want to go there.
And that was my next talking point. I wanted to ask you: is your program in place because of certain laws that we have in the state of Texas, or?
So yes, we do have the Section 504 that was implemented by the Office of Civil Rights and the U.S. Department of Education. Basically, that one applies to all programs and activities that receive funding from federal funds. Includes colleges, universities, post-secondary vocational education, and of course, adult education programs. And then we also have what is known as the ADA, the Americans with Disability Act of 1990, which was then amended in 2008. But basically what it is that it extends the anti-discrimination legislation of Section 504. And then basically it extends to all higher education, whether they receive federal money or not. And then of course the ADA, when it was amended in 2008, is basically now broadened the definition of disability, and now
Mhm.
includes activities such as reading, concentrating, working, learning, thinking, basically what we do here on campus. So yes, we are here because that's what our office has been assigned to do. So we're here to follow the ADA law, and of course
Awesome.
Section 504, and yes.
No, that's so great. What about class presentations? Do you all do class presentations to any of the departments or classes or anything like that, professors, if they reach out?
We love to present. So yes.
Awesome. Yes.
So just yes, we do have a presentation request form on our
Your
website.
page. Okay.
Yeah, so if you go to utrtv.edu/accessibility, on an orange tab, one of them, it says forms. I think it must be the first one that says presentation request form. Submit one and we'll reach out for all the logistics and what information you need. Our main goal is to keep all the students informed. Many students don't know about us.
Right.
So we want them to know about our services, and we also want to promote awareness as part of our mission. So and maybe it could be that it doesn't directly affect them. Maybe they don't have a disability, but it could be that a classmate does, or a family member that's on the way to campus, that they're just about to graduate from high school or whatnot. So as long as many students know, they could pass a word to other students that may need it, and then they can come over to our office and for assistance. And so yes, it's unfortunate not many students know about the resources that we have here on campus. Well, here we present anywhere.
Awesome. No, that's good. And that's why Priscilla and I wanted your all's department to come to our water coolers so that other people could find out about your all services. And that's awesome. We learned a lot. I know I learned a lot more than I knew about your department, which is great. You all do some really amazing things there to help our students. So that's wonderful. Are there any parting words, anything that you would like to leave our audience with today?
Well, more than anything, highly encourage students, faculty to reach out to us. Maybe faculty don't know what does it mean, what a certain accommodation means, or what does it entail. Reach out to us. We'll explain as much as possible. You can always reach out to our offices. In Brownsville, our number is 956-882-7374. In Edinburgh, we're 665-7005. And you can always email us at ability@utrtv.edu. So we're here to provide you with support and promote awareness. And please, students, if you're listening, don't forget to complete your 4-step process for one semester.
Yes, and call if you have questions. Most definitely. We were having some technical difficulties, but we are back. So this is the information for the university resources. And then here is the student accessibilities information, Brownsville and their phone number, Edinburgh and their phone number, the email, and then their website. If you don't need the services, like she said, maybe somebody that you do will in the future or currently does, please reach out. Even if you just have questions, you're just curious, reach out. I have met the individuals that work in this office. They're lovely people, and they really want to help our campus community. So thank you so much for joining us, Maria. We're very grateful. Again, like Priscilla mentioned at the beginning of our water cooler, this is the last water cooler for the semester. So you all please, please, please be safe. Take care of yourself and your loved ones, and we will see you next semester. You all have a great day.